viewers, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Priscilla if this is your first time seeing me, and this is Kim Dave, the channel where we talk about all things fashion design and the reality of running a fashion business in today's day and age. Now this video is in partnership with Dovetailed London, which is a black owned brand that has a mission to bring more color and print to people's homes and wardrobes, which sounds just like something that I love to do myself. They've been so kind to actually gift me some goodies here. I have Ankara fabric as well as a sewing pattern for their camel dress, which is one of their very popular and iconic styles. So this video is going to be dedicated to putting that dress together. My first encounter with Dovetailed was actually earlier this year. I went to the V&A to see the African fashion exhibition, and they had this area where they were selling like merchandise by black owned brands, and one of the books that I saw there was a book called 25 Sewing Projects You Can Do with Ankara Fabrics, and the book just it stole my attention and I ended up buying it. Now this book I gifted to one of you guys during the K-Diva of the month, but I just thought it was such a clever idea, so you get the drift of what the brand is about. I'm going to leave their link down below. Do support them. It's a black owned, woman owned brand doing amazing things. They currently have a concession at Liberty London as well, which I think is really cool. So you can shop the pattern I'll be using, the fabric, as well as other sewing goodies on their website. The first thing in the pack is the actual sewing pattern itself, and this comes as a physical pattern here. This dress design I think is actually very clever in the sense that it has two lengths. There is a shorter length and then there is a longer length, so you get that two in one pattern. It also goes from a UK size 8 to 26 or US size 4 to 22, and then on the back you get like a whole chart that really gives you a breakdown of the different dimensions for the different sizes, so you can double check your body measurements with the size here before you cut your pattern and you make your garment. I think the very clever thing that I saw here that I thought was really good, and I've not seen on a lot of patterns, is it tells you the fabric amount that you need for the different sizes. So for example, for the UK 8 to 18 you would need 4 yards of fabric to actually make the dress. That I think is really cool. It also gives you fabric suggestions, so you can use wax print, which is what I'm going to be using today. You can use like a lightweight or medium weight cotton. You can use a poplin, linen, silk. You can use georgette or chambray, so on and so forth. I actually think that's quite cool. There are 8 pattern pieces in here, and it just gives you like additional materials that you need to get. So you need to get like a long zip, you need to get lining, you need to get matching thread. So you know, once you get this, you just check through the material requirements, you buy that, you know you're actually ready to make your dress. So I'm just going to open this and let's take a look at what comes inside of the pattern. Now in here you have the pattern pieces, and it tells you like what pattern it is on the front. So I'm going to put that to the side. It also comes with an instruction manual on how to actually put the piece together. That I think is very helpful, because it might be someone who has not made a dress before or who is not used to the order of assembling clothing. This would be very useful, and it just tells you like what to do with like little diagrams as well. And then on the back they have pictures of more sewing patterns available to shop from their websites. That I think is actually very helpful. The first one here is a thank you card that says, "Hi Kim, thank you so much for agreeing to do a collaboration. The whole team is so excited." Thank you. That's so cute. Oh, this is a promo card for a new book that is coming out on the 24th of October. You know, I told you guys about the one that I saw at the V&A that was sewing with African prints. They have a children's version coming out. I actually think that's so clever. And it includes 13 full-size print-out patterns. That's actually very clever. So do check that out if you're someone who is into making kids wear, or you want to get into making kids wear. I think this is a great place to start, and the projects are for babies to 5-year-old. So this is what the adult one looks like, and then this is what the kids one look like. So this video should be out before this book launches, so grab a copy for yourself and you will not regret it. There are also some more cards in there. Thank you so much, guys. This is actually quite thoughtful. So thoughtful. To the Ankara fabric of the day, this is a fabric that I was gifted. I don't think I've ever used Ankara fabric that looks like this. It looks like Afro-futuristic. That's the best way to describe the vibe I'm getting from this fabric. Like, it has bright neon yellow, red, orange, black, and the kind of shapes I think are really, really cool. This has a very good weight as well, so this is like a really nice cotton, and it's a total of 6 yards. I would only need 4 yards for this dress because my plan is to actually make the mini version and then just have fun with styling it for the current season. It's a super versatile style, so I'm actually excited to put this dress together. The pattern came with these 4 sets, and each one had a group of patterns in there. Like any commercially sold pattern, you would see it in such a way that the lines are graded to the various sizes that the design has. So I went in to open up my pattern to check that I had all the pieces I needed, and the pattern actually comes with the seam allowance included of 1 centimeter. So I'm going to cut it down to a size 8, and when I measured the pattern, I noticed I was in between size 8 and 10. So what I did was I added a 1 centimeter seam allowance around my pattern, but if your measurements are true to whatever size are included in the pattern, just cut it down to that size. The seam allowance is already included. So the top pattern has a front and a back, and the front actually has a neck and a waist dart, which I thought was really interesting. The back has a neck dart on here as well, and then I have a sleeve pattern. This is a flare sleeve that is going to be gathered in along the hem with an elastic. You can leave it as a flare if you don't want an elastic band, but that's how the sleeve was designed. Now it also has a 2 skirt patterns, one for the front and one for the back. This is a shorter skirt design. It also comes with a longer skirt pattern piece, so if you want your dress to be longer, you go in to cut out the longer skirt. It clearly says and is like clearly labeled on the pattern, so you can't really miss them. Like I did with the top, I added a 1 centimeter seam allowance around the side, and then it also has an inseam pocket, which I thought was really cool because that I'll be able to use as I wear the dress over time. I've gone ahead to press my fabric, and I'm going to pin the pattern pieces onto my fabric and cut out all the pieces I need. So I'm going to cut a pair for the back, and then the front I'm going to cut on a fold because I don't want a seam on the center front. I'm also going to go in to cut out the skirt pieces, the pocket pieces, and for the pocket I'm going to cut a pair that would make the pocket bag on each side. The pocket is going to sit into the skirt along the side seam, and then I've cut the sleeve as well. This dress you can make without the lining, but I feel like the lining is going to help you finish the neckline really nicely. So I cut the lining in black like satin, and then the skirt I made about 3 centimeters or 1 inch shorter along the hem, so it's not visible from the outside of the dress. Now that I have all of my pieces cut out of the way, it's actually time to stitch this dress. Now I'm going to start off with the darts because it has 2 neckline darts in the front and 2 waist darts, and those I'm going to mark in such a way that I keep the shape of the dart. Now using pins, because the neckline dart is not exactly like a triangle, it's more of like a rounded shape, I'm going in to use pins to puncture through the dart lines from the paper onto the fabric, and once I have those pins in place, I'm going to lift each pin at a time and then mark with a chalk. The aim here is to transfer the dart as accurately as possible to the wrong side of the fabric using the pin and chalk method. So you lift paper slightly with the pin still in the fabric, and you just like go over that pinned area with a chalk. And once you have all of those points marked with a chalk, you kind of see like dashed guided lines that represent the dart. This I'm going to do for both sides of the neck dart, and then I'm going to go ahead to mark the waist dart later on. Now that I have the darted lines in there, I'm going to connect them together so I can clearly see this, and I'm able to stitch it more accurately when I am stitching up the dart. I find that the shape of this dart is actually quite interesting, but it makes a lot of sense because it is tailoring that part of the garment to sit nice and flat on the body by getting rid of the excess through this dart. I've done this for this side. I'm going to repeat it on the other side, and then I'm going to go ahead to pin away the waist dart, and I use the same method of passing a pin through the dart point and then lift the paper with the pin still in the fabric and then mark that point with a chalk. I'm going to repeat this on the left side as well, and I've gone in to notch the dart edges along the top and the bottom, so along the shoulder and along the waist seam, and because I have marked them with a chalk, I know exactly how much I need to stitch away. Now the front has the neck and the waist dart, whereas the back actually has only the neck dart. I thought this was actually interesting because in my head I'm always like, oh, there should always be a waist dart in the front and the back, but the design still worked anyway. So I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to be stitching away the dart. And with this neckline dart, I have found that you have to easing both sides, which means you just have to pull it slightly so they both meet. Because it's curved, you have to like help the fabric to gently ease into each other. After stitching up all of the darts, I'm putting right sides together of my front and my back pieces, and I'm going to be sewing up the shoulder and the side seam to connect the front to the back. Is the fit of this bodice on me. Wow. The interesting detail that I find with this design is the darts on the neckline. I've never actually done this type of like dart going from the neck all the way to around the bust area, but it just really shapes the bodice like, and it sculpts it to my body in a very, very flattering way. Like, look at that. Because the neckline is a high neck, so the lining is how I'm going to finish the neckline, but just look at how smooth this is. It's so flattering on the body, but this is looking really, really good. This was not intentional. These 3 yellow bars here was not intentional, but it looks like it was planned into the bodice, and I love how it's looking so far. I'm going to go ahead to work on the skirt, add the pockets, and then join that to the bodice here, connect the sleeve. No, add the zip and then connect the sleeve to finish everything up. But ooh, wow, this is so cute. Now that I've tried on the top and I'm happy with how it's looking, in the same manner, I'm actually going to stitch the lining pieces together. So stitch away the darts on the front and the back, join the shoulder and the side seam. So I have my full lining pieces with the center back open like so. This I'm going to be sewing together on the neckline, and that is how I'm going to finish the neckline of this dress. You want to start, I would say, like 2 centimeters away from your center back edge, because you will need that allowance open to fix your zip later on. I'm going in here with a small scissors to cut tiny incisions along the seam allowance before turning it, revealing the right side to press my seam open like this. After I've pressed it down flat, I'm going to go back in and then fold it against itself and press on the right side of the top so I can smoothly iron the neckline. This is what the neckline of the top looks like. I have never made a neckline like this, so I just thought the outcome was really, really cool. It's giving futuristic, it's giving sci-fi, and I'm totally here for it. Now that the bodice is done and out of the way, I'm going to go ahead to sew the sleeves. The sleeve is a puff sleeve that is gathered in on the sleeve head into the armhole. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to overlock the hem on my overlocker. If you don't have an overlocker, you can just create your tunnel by folding it in twice so you can pass your elastic through. But once I have overlocked mine, I'm folding it with right sides facing each other because I want to join the side seam of my sleeve first. Whatever I do for one side of the sleeve, I'm going to go ahead to repeat on the other side of the sleeve as well. Folding and sewing the hemline once, I have created a tunnel where my elastic is going to sit, leaving an opening for me to go into join the edges of the elastic. My elastic length itself is 11 inches. To get that length, I recommend measuring around your arm, your bicep area, and then take away like 2 inches to get how much elastic that you need to cut out. With a safety pin attached to one end of my elastic, I'm passing it through the tunnel like so until it comes out at the other end, and then I'm going to join the edges of the elastic so they are locked inside of the tunnel. This you can stitch by hand, but I'm going to take mine to my machine and I'm just going to be sewing it with a normal straight stitch, going over it several times so it stays nice and locked. It's better to use a zigzag stitch to do this. It just prevents the elastic from snagging. That's the tip I will give at this point. But once I have my elastic bands joined along the edge, I'm going to go ahead to stitch the opening that I left to allow me to put that elastic through the tunnels. Now on the sleeve head, I've gone in to sew with the longest stitch so I can gather it in to make like a little puff on top of the sleeve, and this is going to allow me to really make the puff of the sleeve stand even more on the top half of this dress. Now I'm passing the sleeve into the armhole of my bodice like so, and I'm going to be sewing the sleeve into the armhole of the top on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, keeping the gathered that I just made on the sleeve head on top of the sleeve, and then sewing the rest of the sleeve curve into the armhole on a round. This is a slightly more technical way to stitch a sleeve, but if everything has been cut correctly, the sleeve should actually fit right into that armhole. After stitching it in, I'm going in here to overlock my seams so I have a beautiful finish on the inside of the dress as well. Moving on to sewing the pockets, this is like an inseam pocket and that's going to sit on the side seam of the skirt. I'm going to get one side of the pocket and attach it along the side seam. The pattern has notches, so you just find those notches and align your pocket on that side, and the aim is to go in and repeat the same on the back, because when you have two sides of your pocket and they are stitched together on the side, you make a pocket bag inside the side seam of your skirt. So I'm going to take these pieces to my machine and I'm going to be sewing them on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, attaching them along the side like this first. After stitching it down this way, I'm going to go back in and do another stitch that's going to lock the pocket on the inside as well as tucking away the seam allowance. This I'm going to repeat on the front pieces as well as the back pieces, and once I have them stitched like this, I'm going to put right sides together of my front and back skirt pieces. The aim is to stitch the side seam from the waistline around the pocket and down the bottom of the pocket area. So with one continuous stitch, you've joined the pocket and you've joined the side seam of your skirt. So this I'm going to do on the left and on the right hand side, leaving the center back edge open because that's where my zip is going to sit. Now I'm sewing on 1 centimeter seam allowance, making my way from the top down to the side, and when I reach the side of the pocket like this, I'm going to leave my needle in, lift my footer, and then continue sewing around the pocket. By leaving the needle in, you prevent the piece from moving around, so you kind of have a clear point of reference. And then I'm going to sew around the bottom of the pocket to make my way back to the bottom of the side seam, leave the needle in as usual, and then turn it downwards to stitch up the bottom edge of the side seam of the skirt. Once that was all done, I gave my piece a press and overlocked any edges that were going to be visible on the right side of the piece. You don't have to do this if you're going to be lining your piece anyways, but I have a pet peeve of seeing raw edges and I just like to get rid of them if I can. So now that my main skirt is done, I'm going to stitch up the waistline of the skirt to the waistline of the top, and I'm going to be connecting the main pieces separate from the lining. This is a technique that allows you to have a very clean finish on the inside of your garment. So I'm going to be sewing up with one continuous stitch, joining waistline of top to bottom, and then I am going to be attaching the skirt lining to the top lining. Now the same way I stitched up the main skirt, I'm going to be joining up the side seam of the lining. Because the lining doesn't have pockets, I have one piece that I'm now going in to connect to the waistline of the lining, so it's a separate entity on its own, and this I'm going to be stitching up on a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So when you look on the inside of the dress, you don't see any raw edges, you don't see any seams, you just have a smooth and beautiful finish on the inside. Next up is stitching in the invisible zip on the center back edge, and this I am pinning in one tape at a time, one side at a time. And once I have the zip pinned in place, I'm going to be sewing the zip to the main dress alone first, and I'm going to use a lining to conceal the edge of that center back afterwards. Now this I'm going to take to my machine, and I'm going to be sewing the zip, unfolding it gradually as I stitch, stitching as close as possible to the teeth without it being too close so the zip doesn't catch the fabric when you wear the dress over time. I'm going to do this on both sides so I have the zip fully stitched into the center back of the dress. Now I'm going to go to the bottom edge that I had left open, and I'm going to be sewing that bottom seam closed so the back of the zip on the back of the dress is actually like stitched away, stitching as close as possible to the bottom edge of the zip. Now that I have done that, I'm going to use my lining edges on the center back to finish off the back edges of the zip. This is a great way to conceal the zip edge and that back edge by stitching it in such a way that you are folding the right side of your lining and the right side of your piece. And the plan is to go in here and sew along that, you know, that seam allowance where your zip was stitched in. You want to sew from the neckline all the way to around the point where your zip stopped, trimming down the top corner where your back neckline is, and then repeat the same thing on the other side. So what ends up happening is you sandwiched your zip tape in between the lining and your main dress. This way you have a very clean finish on the inside of your dress, and it's just like a professional way to actually finish dresses if this is something you wanted to try out. It's time consuming, it can be tiring, but if it's done correctly, it is so satisfying. In a similar manner as I finished off the open bottom edge of the zip on the main dress, I'm going to go in to finish up that open edge on the bottom of the lining as well. That way I have it concealed away and tucked away on the wrong side of the lining, stitching as close as possible to where the zip ends on the center back seam of the dress. Once I had that done, I'm going in here to hem the bottom of the dress, overlocking first and then folding and stitching once afterwards. I just folded by 1 centimeter or roughly half an inch, and with that all done, I gave my dress a press to relax all of the stitching, and this is what it looks like. I think the feeling I get wearing this dress is it's such a classy, versatile and timeless design. It is something that you can definitely dress up or down depending on where you're going to and depending on if it's the warm time or the cold time of the year. The one detail I did play around with that I forgot to show you guys was on the back of the bodice, along where the waist dart would have been. I ended up placing away about 1 inch into the waistline of the skirt. So that's something you should keep an eye out for. I don't know if I didn't just stitch mine well or if I was meant to add a dart, but you can either fold it away like I have done in mine, or you can stitch it up if you encounter that same feature or that same detail when you create your own dress. I'm going to link the sewing pattern, the fabric, and more details on Dovetailed in the video description down below. If you guys enjoyed watching this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you recreate this, don't forget to tag us on social media at Dovetailed London and at Kim Dave Designs. And until next time, have a good morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.